that arena exists. The tickets, the seats, the jersey sales, the concession, that it exists because of the fans and the people that believe in their team and their franchise. And so, you never can lose sight of that. And that's what you do it for.
You're listening to Studio 22.
It's not every day I get to feel small, so I appreciate you coming on, man.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. Dude, thanks for coming on, man. I met you briefly at Madison Club. I know you will know each other from before, but how's it hanging? How's everything going, bro?
Good, man. Just enjoying a little off season. I think playing football for 16 years and then going straight into doing Thursday night footballs. My life is now the fall is football, and This is the off season, so it's good.
Yeah, that is amazing. Like having that one routine and then kind of circling back and still contributing and being a part of the game you love, right? Like that's got to be special.
It is, and it's wild though. I mean, I still get like the last 2 years, late July, early August, like I'll wake up in the middle of the night, like, whoa, wait a minute, like I'm not in shape, or like when's camp, or like I'm late for a meeting. Like I still kind of wake up that way because you got to think. Since I was 15 years old in high school, going to training camp in August. Last year, really was the first time ever in a month of August I'm not in a football training camp. So, it'd been 24 years or something since I'd really had not had that experience. So that was the weirdest part, like honestly. And then now it's like kind of getting in a groove. My first off season after doing Amazon, it's like, all right, now it's like, who are you this time of year? Because I don't really know, because the year before you're coming off of still playing football. And now this year, it's like I've kind of found some things that I'm into and I want to do, and what does the next 20 years look like that you want to be a part of. So that's kind of been the fun journey that I'm on now.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have that one nightmare for lacrosse where I would wake up forgetting my pads, right? Like the dream is I go to the game and I don't have my pads and I can't play.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know what it is.
Mine is like, when you show up to the NFL football, you usually always inevitably the first day have some version of a conditioning test. Okay. So I'd wake up and be like, whoa, I haven't done any of the sprints or the shuttles or whatever. Like, I'm like, crap, I don't know if I'm going to pass the test today. And it's like, damn. No, wait a minute. I don't have
there is no test.
I don't have any football. That's great.
That's wild. What have you been leaning towards since retirement? Like what kind of like hobbies or interests? What do you see for the next 20 years?
Well, I think when you play NFL football, especially I think any professional athletes this way, you're so scheduled out. Like, especially football for us, because I always say our sport not only is involved the physicality, obviously that's at a really high level, but we probably from a film study days, like our days are crazy compared to most other sports. Like baseball, I'm good buddies with Christian Yelich, just like talking to him, it's like, hey, they got to go hit a couple balls. They got to show up at the park. But, they're kind of hanging out before a game, just kind of keeping loose. But it's not like regimented hours, right? Like whereas in football, every hour is accounted for, like every single week. And so you just feel like you're almost in the military in the sense of every day's on repeat. Every week's the same week. Every, week on Wednesday at 9:30, I know exactly the meeting I'm having. At 11:30, I know we're doing third down install. At 1 o'clock, I'm walking through. At 3 o'clock, I'm practicing. I know what time I'm eating. Like you could guess the day every day, right? And so you're used to that. And then you enter this world where it's like, just do whatever you want today.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa, like what's going on? Because that's my favorite question to ask a rookie, NFL rookie.
Yeah.
Every year when the season ends, like, what are you going to do for the off season? Because you got to think about those kids. They've come from high school where they're in school all year round. They're playing their sport, the next sport they go into, to college. Yeah. They play college football, and then the off season, they're full training programs, the whole fourth quarter programs, back in school. Then you go to the NFL, you go through this massive process of the combine, the draft, you get on a team, you're trying to figure out a playbook, you're trying to figure out how to exist in the league, and then January 5th comes, and the season's over, and your team didn't make the playoffs, and you're like, hey, see you in May.
Right.
And those kids are like, wait, what? Like, they're like, what's going on? Like, why isn't somebody shepherding me? Why isn't somebody to tell me what to do? Like, where am I supposed to be? They all of a sudden have 4 months, the first time in their life. They got a little money in their pocket, and it's like, what do I do? Like, who am I? Where do I go? Where do I like to live? Where do I want to stay? What places do I want to go to for the offseason? So it's just a weird experience for them because you go from that. And so it's the same thing when you retire. You've been one way for so long, and now all of a sudden I have the freedom to do what I want. So for me, it's been some hybrid of a bunch of things. I'm coaching all my kids. I have 4 kids, 13, 11, and 9. So it's coaching basketball and coaching baseball and coaching football and coaching my 9-year-old daughter's basketball team. It's kind of just bouncing all over the place and those different things. And then also a little bit of what I love to do, and that's mentoring guys, creating that space to be able to help guys across the league, consulting a little bit in the league for different coaches, different teams, doing some of that type stuff, just staying involved, one way or another. I think athletics, there's all these common themes. And so it's really just staying involved in sports, and, that's what I love. And so that's part of it. As I always say, I think I'm busier now, because it's not a schedule. So I'm just all over the place. Hey, yeah, can you come do this? Can you come do that? Will you help this guy? Will you help this? And so it's been fun. It's been a little chaotic as far as you're figuring out how to say no to people sometimes, and hey, no, maybe I can't do that. But the other part of it's been fun, and it's fun just kind of redefining who you are and what you're into.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because you can say you retired from football, right? But you didn't retire like that.
Yeah.
You still have so
The
much going
mentality's
on.
still there, right? You're still
and
still
I think
locked
too, that's the other thing, right? Like young athletes, you see this all the time. Like, you see all these numbers of the amount of athletes that end NFL football and go broke, or they have these things, where just there's life after football. And I think that's the biggest thing for me to help young guys understand that I feel responsible for. And then also for myself is that there's a lot of life after that. Yeah. And so, what are you going to do with it? What's your plan for it? I've seen Andrew Hawkins talk about this. Like, if you haven't started to have a plan for who you are when football's over while you're playing, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, because all of a sudden you're going to be like, there is no more football. Like, what's your other identities? Like, what else is there in life that's important to you? And so for me, that's been kind of the fun journey. It's like, what's important to me? What do I want to be doing? Do I want to travel? Do I want to be involved in certain organizations or things that I want to do? What does that look like? And kind of the discovery of that. Like, I call it the rediscovery, but it's like the rediscovery of who you are, and what you're into. It's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, I feel like people go throughout their lives, not just in a natural process, but to go from football, where you, exactly like you're saying, you're so regimented, and then just have it just clear out. That's got to be just a trip all around. Do you have people that have come before you, guys that have come forward that have mentored you or helped you through that at all? Or is it more you're just in the mentor seat helping other people?
Yeah, I think there's obviously guys I've paid attention to, and then there's guys I've had conversations with. Like, I'll never forget 2 years ago, being at American Century after I just retired. It's my first summer from being done with football, and talking to Larry Fitzgerald and him talking about, hey man, just the emotion that he had in from you go from being, especially a guy like him, right? You're the leader of this entire organization. You are the captain of captains, right? And every person in that organization, and it's not just the players. It's people in the training room, the strength staff, the coaching staff. Like, all those people look up to you for the individual you are. And
Such
you're
a
involved
nice guy, too.
Oh, dude, he's amazing. And you're involved in their everyday life of what they're trying to be good at, right? Yeah. And then you step away. Well, the big wheel of the league keeps moving. And to take a guy like that, and I remember him and I having this conversation of wow, we never realized how big the wheel was, because it's even as involved as both of us were in our organizations. Now it's man, nobody calls you. Nobody's reaching out to you for stuff. Nobody's leading, because you're not in the building, right? You're not on the team anymore. So who are you in that moment? And to see guys for us to have this conversation where you're both guys who played forever, so involved in the league, and now you're dang, I'm on the outside. What do you do out here? Nobody even reaches out to me anymore. Yeah. People you thought you were really close with, you are close with them, but they're busy. The wheel's turning. They're still trying to get ready for the next NFL season. They're, training. They have focus with their family, all those things, right? And so you start to realize, you can't get sensitive about it. You got to realize that that's the nature of the beast that you were a part of. And so you got to have a plan for how you're going to handle that and what you're okay with in that. And so I think for me, having learned that, heard it from him, then having to apply it to myself, it's helped me kind of give guys a heads up on that too. And some guys like Jason Kelsey just, announced his retirement. It's one of the first things I told him, man, it's going to be different, bro. Just be ready for it. And you're going to be all right, but you just got to understand it's going to be a strange ending, because when you've played as long as we did and then you stop, you're going to go from being the guy everybody leaned on to man, people keep moving and you're missing people leaning on you. As much as you thought that was a problem, you actually didn't realize that's part of your medicine, right? People need me. People want me around. And all of a sudden you feel unwanted, and you got to get okay with that emotion.
Damn. I mean, man, I come from such a different side of it because, you know, I grew up moving around all over the place and I never got to be in sports because I moved too much. And so I was just an artist, bro. I was a surfer, a skater.
Yep.
I painted. I did everything that was just what I wanted to do all the time, you know, and I didn't have a structure. So to hear from the other perspective where it's like, I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes for a moment. And I'm like, I can only imagine how I can imagine it being confusing, can be difficult, can be like emotionally, like where I would be mentally. I'd struggle with it, dude. I think I really would, to go from such a structured thing to almost just like a pure freedom, but with no direction, you know, like where.
Yeah, like I have days, dude, where I'm literally like, is it okay if I just like go to the golf course today? Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have to
yeah.
like
Oh, wow.
ask myself,
Wow.
is that okay?
Yeah.
Like, you know, because it's like you're so used to every day had to be, I'm
Yeah.
chasing being better so I can be prepared for next season.
Yeah.
And like you've almost never given yourself like the freedom to think it's okay, just do what you want to do today.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
and that's like you have to reprogram yourself. And then you got to know what it is you want to do, right?
Yeah.
You have never even thought that way.
Damn.
Well, that's another question I kind of had. Like, you see with, you know, retired athletes or sports personalities, like, you know, Stephen A. Smith on his podcast is leaning a little bit more into politics, and Shannon Sharp is really leading into culture.
Yep.
Do you have an avenue like that where you feel like with your podcast or with what you're doing, that an angle that you want to attack?
Yeah, I think for me, you know, I've always really enjoyed the big picture of whether it be sports or performance. And so I think for me, it's like not necessarily leadership, but just really what all entails to be a part of success and to be a part of chasing success as a group. I think that's such a cool, complex thing. Like I always say this, I think that's why you can watch free agency right now. And it's like teams are getting so excited, like, oh man, they just signed all these guys. They spent all this money and got these guys. And then we'll be sitting here next, you know, November, and we'll be like, well, dang, this team still's not any good. Or they spent all that money. Like we got all so jacked up about it, right? And it didn't have an impact. And then we're all going to, you know, like I kept saying the other day, like we're watching this free agency and all this money's getting moved around. And Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes are just like sitting around their couch like, man, this is so cool, but we'll be back there again next year. Right. So it's like, you know, they're just like, whatever, y'all keep doing whatever you do. Because to me, if you have the guys on your team that make people around you better and they impact the entire building to aspire to be better and to aspire to find whatever the better version of each one of them is every single day, you can't buy that in free agency. And when those people exist in your building, you just keep them there and you just keep winning. And like those two dudes are some of the rarest guys. And not only how they play the game and what they do, but their ability to make people around them play better than they're even capable of and be inspired to play even more passionate than they're capable of. So you can sign the baddest free agent on the planet and you can assemble whatever team you want. If you don't have people in your building that make it about more than themselves and make the people around them better, like you will never get there. So you can spend as much money as you want to. It's never going to happen. And so I think to me, that's really what I'm into. Like I love finding those people that are just different. You watch them. Like I look at Joe Burrow, like his impact immediately in Cincinnati. Like that's not just how he's played. He has something about him that building changed the moment he walked into it. And their ability to compete at a high level changed. Like there's just rare guys out there. Joe's just another example of they have that ability. There's just something about them that when you're around them, you want to be at your best at all times. You're inspired. And we all know people like that. And so to me, it's not just sports, it's life, it's business, it's everything. Like, you know, the guy who walks in the room at the country club that you're like, man, when I go to the golf course, I see this guy. The whole entire driving range lights up when this dude walks on the driving range. Like we all know that guy, right? And it's like everyone's mood changes instantly when that guy walks in the room. And so I think there's just lots of individuals like that. And I love talking about that kind of thing and that ability to really make people around you maybe not only just want to be better at something, but feel better about who they are. So that's the kind of things like I love talking about. And really, I'm sure what I'll get more into, you know, I can talk your head off about that kind of stuff, but that's what I love, man. I love people. I love impact. I love culture, atmosphere, what makes people tick. That kind of stuff's fun for me.
Yeah, it's almost like, first off, that's really admirable. And I love hearing that because we, you know, really try to highlight on the podcast motivational things, aspirational stuff, and like really get to the core of, you know, what makes someone who they are and identity. And we love exploring all that. When you were talking about leadership in sports too, you think of like a Steph Curry, right? Or a Klay Thompson and how they have done so well for so long by really being quiet leaders and leading by example, right? They're neither of them are very outspoken or
Right.
too over energetic, or even in entertainment. You think of like when you mentioned walking into a room, you think of like a Clooney,
Yeah.
right? Like the
Yep.
whole room
Lights up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's really cool. I love hearing that because it's like it's that angle is what makes them special and like really getting more into that.
Yeah, I look at it like I always tell the story of Patrick. Like I've always had a ton of respect for Mahomes, and obviously young players had an insane amount of success at an early age. But I played for the very first time in the American Century Championship in Tahoe probably 3 years ago, and I was literally in a room, had my family with me, my wife and my kids, and we brought, I think her parents were out with us, and my caddy and his wife, and we're in like a private room in the hotel, like in the dining room restaurant, and the doors kind of cracked open, and I'm sitting at the end of the table, and I hear it was right after the Chiefs had won a couple years ago, and I can hear Travis Kelce and Mahomes and their crew going down the hallway, and they're kind of loud. You could tell they're having a good time. And I had never met Patrick in person at this point. I've always kind of been a fan of this young player who's obviously crazy successful, this quick in his career. And I hear him going down the hallway, and I kind of like, I'm sitting there talking to my family, but I see him walk by like corner of my eye through the door, and I see him like stop. And he like tells me, hey, you guys go ahead. And he pops in the door. And I'm like, never met this dude ever. Here he is. He just won the Super Bowl, the MVP. Like, this dude's on top of the planet. And he's like, I just saw the big fella in here. And like, hey, if y'all don't mind, can I come in? And so he's like, ask my family if he can walk in the room. Like, they're dying. Like, this Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
My kids are like, Dad, you actually know Patrick Mahomes? It's like, calm down. So he like comes in the room, gives me a hug. He's like, I just had to give this dude a hug. Like, I've watched you play forever and like respect you so much, man.
Dude.
Like, give you love. And then like walks through the room and says, hey to every one of my family members. And like, just gives the love and walks out. And to me, it wasn't just that he did it. It was, in my mind, my first thing I thought was like, this dude's different. Like, because he gets it. He's young, he's successful, but let me tell you why he's that way. Because of that. He gives respect. He understands what means what it means to people to feel respected, to feel appreciated. And when you're that talented as he is, and you're that rare as he is, and you also have that, you are going to be really special at, I don't care what we're talking about, business, sports, life, you name it. So when he walked out of that room, I was like, man, this dude's going to be rare. And not because he gave me this love, it's because he identified what that would mean for him to do that. And he could realize in that moment he should do it.
Yeah.
And to me, like, that's just being aware of where you're at, how you have impact. And when you're really special and you're also aware of that impact ability, man, the sky's the limit.
Yeah. I mean, so many people in that position could easily just have a big head, have an ego.
Yeah, just walk right through. Like, and I wouldn't be mad at you for it. I'd be like, dude, this dude just won a Super Bowl. I'm not really bothering him. Like, he didn't have any reason to say hey to me. That was the point. Like, to me, I was blown away. Like, dude, why would you even care?
Yeah, that's
but
amazing.
The fact that he's wired that way just shows you he's different. He's not your normal guy who's successful. He's got a mission to be everything it is he can possibly be.
Yeah. I mean, so much of what you're saying, it resonates with me because one of the first like self-help books, I've always been into that since I was young. And one of the first ones I picked up, I was about 18 years old, is a Tony Robbins book, right? And he's talking about all these successful people from all walks of life. And he said, what's the one thing that all these people have in common? And I'm like sitting here thinking, like, what do they have? Like, I don't know. And what he said was they all have an extraordinary psychology. So it's their mental game. It's their mentality that sets them apart from the difference. And if you have a self-awareness of what you're doing while you're on top of that, that's a whole nother level. And the physicality of it too, right? You've got Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours. You can you can have all the talent in the world, but the person who outworks everyone else and has the mentality to keep on going and persevere and do whatever it takes, that's the person that's going to succeed through and through to the end, And I think what you're saying is so, it's good for people to hear, because you can be great at something naturally. But for you, was that something that came naturally in your life, that just from the way you grew up and being in sports and having the regimen and all that stuff, or is it something that you've also outwardly seeked, or are you just like all in, all around? You know what I mean?
I think I've always had, since I was little, a very aware spirit just of people. Like, I could always walk in a room and have a real good feel for exactly like how people are, who they are, what they're about. Always just like crazy, just natural. I could pick people out in the room and tell you like, this dude's a good friend. Like she would be she's not a good friend. Like this person, like I could just feel like how people are when I walk in a room. And I've always been that way. I can sit in a restaurant and I'm one of those people like, I'm not as worried about our conversation. Like I love to kind of get a feel for everyone around me.
Yeah.
Me too.
Because I'm just like almost like a protective dog. Like when I'm with my people, my mood can change instantly in a dinner because I feel like somebody beside us is like not somebody I'm cool with, or I don't feel like that. I feel like they're being disrespectful to somebody I'm with. So like I all of a sudden went out of like fun mode and now I'm like in like protective dog mode, right? So like I'm very much that way. Like I'm a watchdog in that sense. And so I'm always kind of the person listening, not necessarily talking when I'm at dinner or when I'm doing things with people, like training, everything else. I got my trainer will joke all the time. Like I probably spoke to him once when we work out ever. Like don't talk to me while we're training. Like I'm here to work. But I'm also observing at the same time. And so like I've always naturally had that. But as a kid, I was a pretty lonely kid. Like I always wanted to kind of be by myself in that sense. I had some buddies I grew up with, but I was always like not really the person looking for attention and those kind of things. I was more paying attention to the rooms I was in. But I wasn't like driven with work ethic and all those things. I wasn't that. I was kind of just naturally a pretty good athlete at things. Like I played tennis, I played basketball, I powerlifted, I played football, I did track, I played baseball. Like I did it all growing up. Wow. And had some, version of success at all of them. I was pretty good at, for a big, taller guy, I was a really good athlete. And so that kind of always came natural, but I never had the work ethic to go with it. And then when I got in the league, I always say I stayed healthy long enough to realize, wow, I could change my life, my family's life, people around me's life. Like if I apply myself to this game, and I was always tough. Like you were never going to break me down when I was younger. I was always naturally tough. I just didn't have this like diligent work ethic to fix things all the time. And I think I stayed healthy long enough to develop that and work on it. And I changed that part of me. Like, and so I was a different dude, like in the sense of, you think about NFL off seasons, guys usually have a place they train or a trainer they train with. For me, my first 11 years, I played in Cincinnati, Ohio with the Bengals. And in the off seasons, I lived in Louisiana. My wife and I lived in Louisiana, and that's where we were going to raise our kids. So we flipped back and forth every 6 months. Well, I didn't have like a facility. So I would either like every year was kind of different. Some years I'd go train at like a CrossFit gym and like just like with local, just people hanging out in a CrossFit gym, getting after it, right? Just trying to crush myself. Like one year I hired like a swimming coach and I tried to do like Olympic swimming stuff. Like I was just trying to do like workouts. Like I wanted to like just see how good I could get at swimming. I was horrific at it, by the way. Bad. My buoyancy's not good. Let's just put it that way. I'm swimming up, not across.
That's hilarious.
But then like other years, I got into MMA. I went into, I did almost everything every year. I would like, hey man, what's a new challenge? Like distance running, anything. Every year I took on a new challenge, and that's how I trained in the off season. So I wasn't some like guy who like lifted a lot of weights. I just, I would lift a weight if that was the challenge that year, and so I would really wait till I was back with the team to do their regimen. But in the off season, I took it as like, what's something new I can become really good at? So that helped me develop that work ethic because I started checking into different energy systems. And like like I always tell people, like I ran 110s in college. They were brutal. I always say, listen, you could be on your 16th 110 on jiu-jitsu and you're on your back on a mat and some dude's forearms and your face crushing your like fractal bone, like facial bones. And it's like, all right, you feel like you ran your 16th 110 and now you're like trying to tell yourself just tap and end it. So you're going to these places you never thought you'd ever go in your mind and your will, right? And so I just, those kind of things, I did enough exploring that I found parts of me that I didn't know existed.
Wow.
And that kind of changed. And it's almost like every year after I do one of those experiences, my threshold for pain, my threshold for conditioning, my threshold for like what's hard work kept changing with it. And it's like I'm learning all these new things, these new athletic movements, new traits, new skills. And that's really what helped me be now where I am, where I'm 42. I still go work out with like the Rams O-line sometimes. I play golf. I do everything.
Awesome.
Like, and it's like sometimes I feel guilty when people are like, dude, how do you feel? I'm like, honestly, I feel pretty freaking good.
That's awesome.
But it's like I really credit it to my like curiousness to like, hey, I want to go explore new things to learn how to be good at.
Is that something you're encouraging in younger players that you?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest problems we have today is this all this specialization of sports. I mean, these young youth athletes, it's like they hit, all they do is play baseball every day of the week, and they're traveling every weekend, and they're throwing 10,000 pitches, and they're 12, and it's you look at the elbow issues, the shoulder issues that these kids have. It's, man, go learn some other skill. Like you're going to get to be an even better athlete, even if it is baseball that you want to go play, if you can learn all these other skills and think about what athletics is, it's learning a skill and getting your body to do what you want your body to do when you want it to do it and the timing with which you want to do it. Like, when does that not pay off in any sport? So
Right.
if you continue to redefine your ability to make your body do those things, then to me, you're only becoming an extremely better athlete because you can do all these skills and they all apply. Like, I teach offensive line play. I show guys a lot of different things you do, like in a different sport, and go, hey, have you ever played defense in basketball? Like,
Right.
do you know what it's like to defend the goal? Okay. Like, that's what a quarterback is. The goal's the rim, right? So you're defending the quarterback. He's the rim. Like, what do you have to do to make them run around and have to go out of bounds to get to the quarterback? Like, how would you move your feet? How would you adjust your body? Like, what's the angle of attack that the guy's taking with the basketball that's no different with a pass rusher?
Yeah.
Right. And so that, like, to me, learning those different things, like, there's different skills and maybe you don't know which one will trigger a guy's mind and go, oh, that makes sense. I've done that before. And it's like, bam, now they find that thing that makes them better. And so to me, like, when you're teaching or coaching, to be able to have athletes that have an understanding of all these different things, I mean, I think that's one of the things that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what it sounds like you're doing is you're just making sure that you don't stay complacent. You know, you can get very comfortable in one way of doing something, but exactly what you're saying, there might be something you learned in jiu-jitsu or something that you could toss a guy a little easier, a little different, you know, or something like that. That's really fascinating to hear because I've always been, as an actor, I've always been attracted to trying to overcome things, like trying to figure things out. I'm like, there's a sport, I'm gonna figure out how to play it. I'm gonna be great at it. You know, I don't know if I'm gonna be the best of the best in this one thing, but I'll be good at it. I can figure out how to play basketball. I can figure out how to play chess. I can figure out how to, do this, do that.
You point at me for chess.
Yeah, well, game on, dude.
No, I'm kidding.
But no,
I
I
put the
that.
chess phone app on. I got it.
I got
on my
it too.
phone this year.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
we
my
gotta
new
play.
deal now.
We
No,
gotta
I'm trying to
play.
learn that.
It's fun, dude. Yeah,
I actually enjoyed it. Never thought I would.
Really?
But flying so much with Thursday Night Football, it's like, hey, I need something to do. So I put the chess app on there. I've been learning it while I fly. You know, it's been great. I do the little tutorials. Like, okay, all right.
That's awesome, man.
The brain is a muscle.
That's it.
Yeah.
Dude, every time I beat the computer on the plane too, I feel good about it. You know, 'cause that thing's it's not that easy, bro.
No, I agree.
But it's those constant challenges that I think it makes you better overall. Exactly what you're saying. I think as an athlete too, you're becoming a well-rounded athlete versus just one version. You can be great in one thing, yeah. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like you're limiting yourself is what it seems like if you're doing only that.
Well, think about it.
what I mean?
Like, even if you talk about the 10,000 hours, 10,000 things you repeat, whatever it is, right? To me, like, you're doing a disservice actually once you pass 10,000 if you only keep doing the same exact thing for 10. Like, okay, now I'm gonna do 20,000 that same rate. Well, once you've done 10,000 of something, why wouldn't you include something else that you start to chase 10,000 of, and then you master multiple things. And now you apply all those things together, right? And so to me, that was really what I was after. Is like, how do I master a ton of different things? And then that can all come together into this beautiful big picture of like all the things that I really know how to master. And they relate to no matter which one of those things I'm doing, I can apply all those skills.
Yeah.
Napoleon Hill wrote a book, I think it's called The Laws of Success. And he compares like Jesse James, Thomas Jefferson, like all these successful historical figures. And he compares all their different qualities, right? Like charisma, intelligence, athleticism, or whatever it is. And he kind of makes a chart. And you see how different all of them are.
Yep.
But they were all still so successful in what they did, right? And I feel like that applies to this in the sense of like, not only figuring out what you're good at and playing to your strength, but also, like you're saying, expand those categories. Like get your numbers up in the ones that you're not good at.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I look at it like, Aaron Donald just retired, okay? I always say this to young guys when I go places. Aaron Donald was, this insanely talented, undersized D tackle, with a skill set that's just so rare. But that isn't what made him so special. What made him so special is that he had one of the baddest work ethics I've ever seen in my life. Like the dude was more talented than everybody he played on the field with, but it's also because he trained at a level that nobody could repeat. He practiced with an effort that nobody could repeat. And so when you combine like character of just being a man's man, I don't care about the credit. I don't care about people talking about me. I don't need to tell you anything. Like, he was the type of guy where I feel like players go out on a field and they're like, man, I want to make an interception today. I want to get a sack today. Aaron was like, I'm going to destroy you for 60 minutes. Like, I don't care what happens. Like,
Right.
all the stats are going to happen because I'm going to destroy whoever I line up over. And that's it.
Damn.
And so what I always told people is if you take an NFL player and you say that every one of them wouldn't be there if they didn't have this special talent. And if you put their special talent at whatever number you want to call it, 90, okay, 99, whatever, you put their special talent at a number. The guys who are the rarest dudes on the planet are the ones that not only do they have this special talent, but they also have this work ethic to attack all the things they're bad at. And they start to bring those things up. And when you start to bring those things up and also just taking care of your special talent, you're making sure that it's never going anywhere, but you're bringing all the other things up around it. That's the guys that go to the stratosphere with being how good they are, because it starts to be like the way NFL works, the way athletics work is people are going to attack your weaknesses, and they're going to try to say, hey, this is how you block this guy. This is how you beat this guy. And if you start to eliminate those, now your special talent is, I don't have any weaknesses.
Right.
And oh, by the way, I also still have this other special talent.
Yep.
And so that's really like what my mentality was training, but that's what separates the really rare guys. And like Aaron Donald was that guy. Like his special talent is he could have just lived off of what he was good at, but he out-trained even up until the day he retired. And I guarantee you right now, he's getting after it in a gym somewhere. Like that's just who he is. But that was what made him so special, right? And so I think to me, when you look at these great athletes, it's that ability. Like I thought when you watch the show, the quarterback deal with Mahomes, I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to walked away and they're like, wow, he works that hard like in the season. Like I would have thought he just plays in the game. Like, people had no idea that that's how hard this dude works day in and day out. That's his mentality. And I think that's what you really see is that there's a lot more to it, And so I think that that's really these dynamic guys. There's more to it than maybe we even realize. It's that their ability to bring everything else around them to this next level is what really separates them.
A lot of people too don't know that. I'm a diehard Warriors fan, so I bring up Steph Curry a lot, but a lot of people don't know that he didn't really take off. It was between him and Monte Ellis, and a lot of people wanted to keep Monte Ellis. And then what happened is Steph kept hurting his ankles, right? Because he actually has like thin legs and not that built. Once he actually built up his leg strength and built some muscle, never got injured again, knock on wood. But he got rid of the injury problem and became Steph Curry.
Yeah, and don't forget, the dude's an insane golfer. Like he's just a crazy athlete. Like he can play anything. That dude would be good at anything. He'd probably be an awesome wide receiver. I mean, just the reality. So it's those guys to me like him, rare people, like just day in out the person they are, rare talent, but then also that awareness of, hey man, how do I find all these things that I can also chase to be good at that improve who I am when I shoot? Like there's no doubt that when he's firing up a shot in a critical moment of a game, the skill set of being able to line up a 5-foot putt and make it when everyone's watching and everything's on the line and the nerves you have over that, like those nerves, they correlate. Like, yes, it's not as big a spectacle, but it matters. Like I've gone and played golf with plenty of people who it could just be you and them. But if you make the putt worth $20, all of a sudden they can't even touch the ball. Like it's like they're scared to death. Like pressure matters. And so any way that you can put yourself under pressure, that's on a jiu-jitsu mat, if that's on a basketball court, if that's on a golf course, all those things matter. And so I think guys you see that like chase themselves in a lot of different ways. Like how can I continue to challenge myself? You just see it come out in their ability to be successful in big time moments.
And it's like really it's the ability to fail like over and over again and get comfortable at it and get okay with it, because that's what's going to lead to the successes, right? What you're saying right now too is like, it's for me, it feels like not just a football metaphor, right? But it's such a metaphor for life, because a mentality I adopted a few years ago is I really feel like I want to become the highest version of me. And I started breaking down, what does that mean? Like I want to be the best athlete I can be. Obviously I don't play professional sports, but I like to train. I want to have the best psychology. I want to have the best relationships, family relationship, financial. I want to be able to take every element in my life, every pillar, and make it as fulfilled as possible, right? And not saying I'm going to get there, and I do have more skill set in other places than others, but it's how do you get to that, and how do you have the self-awareness to realize that and then go attack that, right? Is that something that again, is it just like an innate thing for you, or is it something that you've sat down and you said, like, here's the things I need to work on, and let's get to work on them?
Yeah, I think it's being aware of, like, watching people, observing people who are successful. That's why I say, like, I love football. It's great, but I love sports in general. And then I also just love, I don't care what we're talking about, whether it's somebody that's performing in an office building, somebody that's on a football field, somebody in a courtroom, whatever it may be, in a doctor's office, in a surgery. Like, I love hearing people who are really successful, seeing them in their element and what it is that makes them special. Like, I tell this all the time if I go speak to, high schools or youth programs and go read sometimes, and they, they'll ask these questions, and, it's great. Some of the questions you get asked are hilarious. Mine usually have to do with my foot size or how much food I eat. But, every now and then one of them will ask you something about, being successful and, like, what do you think the best route is? And I used to always say, like, man, being a great listener and a great observer and saying, hey, it's be careful idolizing somebody, like saying I have to be exactly like this person.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I want to be Steph Curry, so I have to be exactly like Steph Curry and do everything. Well, no, but what you can do is watch what Steph Curry's great at, like how he treats people, how respectful he is, how you hear this dude talk about the game, how you hear him talk about competition, how you see his work ethic and his ability to push himself to find new links, and see if there's little traits about him that you could apply to who you are. And then go over here to this guy that you think's awesome. And what's a little trait about them that you're like, hey, does that fit in who I am? Like, always making sure you're careful to be you.
Yeah.
But hey, maybe these are some little things I can pick up that I can apply to who I am. And now that makes me this well-rounded version of a bunch of different people that I respect and admire, and I know how special they are, and I know why they're special. But maybe I don't have to be them. I just have to be me, but I can apply some of those little things they do well. Like, I'll never forget when I moved here from Cincinnati, Sean McVay comes in. He's the youngest head coach in NFL history. Goes on, obviously, at the end of my time to become the first youngest head coach ever to win a Super Bowl. But coming in, him and I hit it off immediately. And it was like, because we were both wired that similar way, but we were complete opposites. And so there were things we could feed off of each other for, like things he wanted to be better at and I wanted to be better at. Being confident in who I am, not always like, I'm usually the type before I met him that I may have a great idea or may have a thought or something that I could apply, but I would never say it. And he would always just be like, dude, the whole room wants to hear what you have to say. Like, please, if you have something to say it. Like, everyone's listening, and so he brought that out of me a lot more than I would never be doing Thursday Night Football right now if it wasn't for meeting Sean McVay, because he brought confidence that he instilled in me to believe in who I was and like the way I'd gone about it. And so that to me, when we met each other, there was a lot of things, and there's things that I gave him that he wanted, like from a leadership standpoint, you're a young coach, like he's never like had to lead an entire room. Right. And so it's like those kind of things, there's things we fed off of each other. And we always joked, like the off seasons, it was like going to have a drink at Nobu or going on a trip together. Like we would just powwow on leadership and sports and life and those kind of things. And so we fed off of each other. And those kind of things, to me, it's like those kind of relationships that you can learn how to feed off of people and say, what are some things this person's great at that like I could really follow? And then what are some things that I can give to that person? And I think to me that's when you really find those special relationships, those special things that kind of chase this new version of you that you didn't even know you had the potential to do. Right. And so I think it's really cool when you find those in life.
Yeah. Those are a little more rare, I think, too, because I feel like, going through life, I've found that a lot of people kind of can fit into boxes, right? Like, are you here to help them? Are they here to help you?
Yep.
Or are they just here in passing? Are they going to hurt you? Like, what is that person's intention in their life? But to find someone that you guys can mutually add value to each other's life and help each other grow, that is pretty unique. That I don't think happens all the time. But it's really cool when it does. Yeah, man. Everything you're saying is very relatable for me too, because I've always been. I mean, it sounds like you're an empath. It sounds like you can read the room, right? And I've always been the guy to just sit back, be quiet, and listen, because I found that people will tell you everything that you need to know about them without even saying anything, right?
Yeah, my wife is is a news anchor, okay? And I would always say, we'd be watching the news or watch something, and she'd be like, oh, that reporter ended it too early or like moved on too. And I'd be like, what do you mean? She's like, babe, I did investigative reporting for forever. And she's like, the best way to get everything you want to know is to ask a question and then just sit there.
Yeah.
And like, they'll answer the question the first time. And then when you're just sitting there staring at them, they'll think they didn't answer it right. So they'll start to answer it again. And the second time, they'll give you everything you wanted to know because they start to second guess themselves because you didn't say anything. So you just sit there and listen, and then they just answer it again, and then it's like everything you wanted's coming out the second time, right? Because now the nerves have hit them, and they're like, "Oh, I'll go again," and so they repeat it, and it's like I always learn that it's like it's great to ask questions and all those things, and then just sit and listen and learn. Like I think that's it's a cool way. I think to really be around special people. Take those moments when you get a chance to be around somebody to listen to them. And I think sometimes. People think of like what they want to say when they see that person that that they've now always idolized to meet or whatever, right? I always laugh at that because I'm always like, it'd be better to just think about like, what is it that you'd want to ask them? And then ask it and listen, and maybe that you get fulfilled whatever it is you've been looking for, and so I think that's really cool to be really good at listening and learning because to me, that's some of the rarest things I've had the opportunity to be a part of is when I get a chance to hear from somebody that I respect or admire and hear what they have to say.
That's awesome. That was one of the earlier podcasts we had with Jim Gray, and we asked him to give us some advice, and he said, "Use your ears."
Yeah,
no doubt.
Yeah, it's best way to learn, I think. Yeah.
What we got to ask some questions for the LA audience out there. What speaking of Coach McVay, what were some of the kind of most fun or crazy behind the scenes moments that you can share? That
I mean, obviously a lot. I mean, I look back, 17 coming here as one of the oldest old linemen ever to sign in free agency at 36, with the youngest head coach in NFL history, and Sean. It was quite a ride and a journey. Like it was obviously a big leap for him in an exciting way. It was an interesting leap for me because there's not really been a lineman like at 36 years old to go some other team and sign like a lucrative free agency deal. So it was a kind of uncharted water for me. Like I was like, man, I think my body can last, and I think I'm going to be able to play, but I don't really know. I mean, nobody's really done this that much, So it was an interesting like that, the nerves and just the anticipation he had of being successful and being around. But I mean, I think probably the best behind the scenes is just all the good times we had. Really, I always say this, like you talked about NFL teams. If you ask the Chiefs right now when they won the Super Bowl, they'd tell you that there was a moment in this offseason, leading into camp that they really felt like they had a special group of guys and the way they train and the way they put in the time. A lot of those things are done long before you ever end up playing in games. The relationships, the bonds, the things you build. So to me, it was a lot of those moments just with Sean, with other guys on the team, with Stafford, obviously, when he came over. Goff, played with him for 4 years. I mean, just an awesome dude. I think of those things. Like when I think back of my career, it's hard for me to ever remember many games, like in the sense of just that's not really what your memories come from. My memories are either the moments after, the moments before, and how special they were. Like one that immediately comes to mind with Jared Goff. Kansas City Chiefs, Monday Night Football game here that was supposed to be played in Mexico City. It gets moved to the Coliseum. One of the best football games ever on Monday Night Football, an insane scoring game. But the coolest part of that game wasn't that. It was after the game, that's when you had just had the shootings that had happened out in Thousand Oaks. You had just had the fires where people have been displaced. So we had a lot of first responders, some people from that horrific situation, all at the game in suites. And because the game had been moved back to the Coliseum, no suites had been sold because it was supposed to be Mexico City. So all of us kind of had this opportunity, like, what do you want to do with them? So we were able to kind of, the Rams and all of us put together an opportunity to host all these people. After the game, they had the first responders and a lot of people from that horrific situation down on the field. And I'll never forget being in the locker room, and Jared Goff's locker is right by me. And the reporters, our PR staff comes up and is like, hey, there's an opportunity to go see all these. They're actually out on the field. What do you guys want to do? And I knew what I was going to do. I'm a veteran. I'd been a part of kind of helping out with some of the situations and stuff, and just donating some money and things like that. And so I knew what I was doing. But to hear Jared be like, oh, forget the media stuff. Like, I'm going to do that. And so I'll never forget walking out there on the field with him and hugging people who were crying, had lost people close to them, just had lost their homes, different things like that. Like that moment, I'll never forget. Because I've really never been a part of anything like that on an NFL situation. Like after a game, out on the field, still kind of pads are off, but your jersey's on or whatever, like still sweating, kind of gross, like just hugging people. People are crying, they're emotional, and that kind of feeling. I'll never forget the respect I had for Jared, this young quarterback who just had this insane moment beating the Chiefs and Mahomes in this crazy game. And the first thing he wanted to do was go give himself to these people in LA that just wanted to feel loved and appreciated and cared about. I thought it was just a really just unbelievable emotional moment. To me, that was really special. And then obviously I think the other one, to go from really the Stafford trade happens, in Cabo, in January of 21, and then our 20, and then the next year to go this, our 21, and then go to the Super Bowl. I'll never forget, playing in that Super Bowl, and in 1 year, just watching a guy like that, a veteran, and everything he had, put into the game, to have that success, and then give part of something with Odell Beckham and Von Miller and some of these guys that throughout my career I had great relationships with, and they randomly end up on our team that year. It's just kind of one of those things where like, dang, like we'd always talked about playing together, and then it all happens in this 1 year, and then all of a sudden I play a team in a franchise that I'd been with for 11 years in the Super Bowl in a game that I'd already declared my last game. The only two teams I ever played for are playing each other in the Super Bowl, and to win the Super Bowl, like for me, that'll be like, I don't know. It's like a movie script. It's crazy to think all of that happened. And then on top of it, winning Walter Payton Man of the Year, and my story, and really where I felt like my personal journey with community service and everything started was at a Boys and Girls Club with Derek Barnes in Cincinnati, Ohio, to play them in the Super Bowl, for Derek Barnes to be able to be there that night when I got the award. Really just a surreal moment. And for me to meet him for the first time as an NFL player and not this 7-year-old at a Boys and Girls Club that I spent time with my rookie year, like just that whole thing going full circle, just wild. I mean, it's just a crazy, crazy. I don't know if I'll ever forget that, just all of that just happening in that moment. It was just rare.
Yeah, that's really is all incredible. That's the stuff movies are made of, for sure.
And to have such a long career, man, and to be in the position you're in as one of the oldest, linemen and everything, like it all came together how it was supposed to, man. That's dope, man. I'm like almost getting the chills.
No, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like I think people, and I know it's like, man, the games were awesome. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of just epic moments, throughout my career. I mean, I always joke I was the only Walter Payton Man of the Year who ever got ejected twice in the NFL for fighting. But, it's like, listen, I had a lot of cool moments throughout my career. I fought Big John Henderson, Big Bad John, the Jacksonville Jaguars. We both got ejected my third year in the league in a big brawl. Just like a lot of just cool moments throughout my career that were really awesome, intense, and, just bad. There were awesome moments, badass moments, and those kind of things. But, I really, when I think back on it, it's, the players who, I think of a Gio Bernard, when he's having his girlfriend, he's thinking about like, Chloe, who's like thinking about getting engaged to. And I think of like the guys who came, Mohamed Sanu, when he's having his first child. And, just like Taylor Lewan, I remember mentoring him some, and him, like, hey, I'm about to become a dad. Like, what's that like? Like, those moments is what I'm going to remember the most. Like those 16 years of being, to some people a grandpa because I was so old, to others like a big brother, an uncle, a brother at times, younger in my career. I mean, those are the things I'm going to remember the most, is watching some of these guys that got come to me and just, asking how to handle things with their family, or how to handle financial things, or expectations from a significant other, or whatever. Just those kind of little moments with guys in a locker room are the things I remember the most, just watching guys grow up and become men and responsible for all the things they are. And then now getting to see them with multiple kids and everything else. It's just fun, man, to bond in that way, and have be a part of people's lives, whether it was a big way, small way, whatever. Yeah. That's what I look back at my time in the league and those relationships and how much they meant to me.
That's awesome. It's incredible to hear, man. And, as fans, you get caught up in your team and the scores and all that, and you kind of forget the human element and all that, and the camaraderie and the team building. But that makes perfect sense. I always love it.
Like when I go to an event, you'll be at a golf event or something, and somebody's like, hey man, don't be mad at me. Like I'm a Seahawks fan, and I'm like, hey, listen, if the Seahawks wrote my check, I'd be a Seahawks fan too. Right. We are employed by people, right? So that's just the reality, right? Like, and you might play somewhere long enough that it becomes more than that, right? But the truth is, like, we actually work for those organizations, right? So, the more of them you play with, the more of them you're a fan of because they wrote you a check too, right? So it's like that's just the truth, right? So I'm always like, hey, listen, I love sports, so I'm okay with you being a Seahawks fan. You can be a fan of anything you want to, but if you want to talk some trash, then now we can go at it a little bit, But it's fun, that to me is like that's what makes it so special. Is that people believe in their team, they believe in their atmosphere, and I think that's one of the things I just hope guys understand. It's like that arena exists, the tickets, the seats, the jersey sales, the concession, that it exists because of the fans and the people that believe in their team and their franchise. And so, you never can lose sight of that. And that's what you do it for. You got to remember that first and foremost.
Yeah, that's the people, right? What would you say football has afforded you the most of, or what's the best thing it's afforded you in your life?
I think right now it's really the platform that it's helped me build to, it's this, like I got a chance to be on this stage and be good at something that I got to go through life and have this amazing job, amazing opportunity to fail and repeat and find ways to succeed and like go on this journey that I've failed a ton of times. I've had success. People forget when I joined the Los Angeles Rams, I was right there, I think either tied or leading like NFL history, the worst record ever in the playoffs. I was 0-8 in the playoffs. When Cincinnati, we went 7 times and never won a playoff game. And then my first year in LA, we won the division and lost to the Falcons. So I was 0-8 after my first year as a Ram. Never won a playoff game. And so I went from that. And it's like I could have left in Cincinnati. It was like, hey, you should probably retire or maybe play one more year. Nobody really believes that you'll do more than that. And then I got into free agency and some teams were willing to like, hey, we think you could play a little bit longer. We don't know how long, a year, maybe 2. And the Rams are like, we'll give you a 3-year deal. Like, we need you, blah, 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 blah. And so I ended up signing 2 more contracts with them and staying for 5 years, right? But if I'd have stopped then, I'd have been 0-7 in the playoffs. Really never had the opportunity to play at that level. And in 5 years in LA, I went to 2 Super Bowls. I won a Super Bowl. I went to as many Pro Bowls as I went to in my entire 11 years in Cincinnati. And I doubled what I made my NFL career after 11 years in Cincinnati. Wow. So like to me, it gave me the opportunity to say like to people, not just my story, but like, don't ever let people's opinion of you become your reality. Like, believe in yourself. Don't be afraid to challenge. Don't be afraid to go for things. Don't let anybody put boundaries on you. Like, if you have a dream and you have the ability to aspire to go do something, do it. And just go for it and see where it all pans out. Because I bet you if you give it all you got and you laid it all on the line for what it is you believed in, you're going to walk away happy and you're going to walk away content no matter what the way it ends. And so for me, it just that opportunity to go through that. And to be on the other side of it now and be like, man, that was the bravest thing I ever did to like believe in myself that way. And it actually turned out amazing is really cool. And it gives me an opportunity to share it with people and hope that it helps them. Because you think of how many like 30 to 40 years old, you're in that part of life where a lot of times people are telling you what you can or can't do for the rest of your life. Like this is where you're at, you're stuck. Or this is what you've given and you've probably got to pivot something else, right? And it's like to be able to do that and be able to tell that story to people that may be sitting in that seat and saying, hey, I don't know if I have what it is that I thought I was going to get to this dream stage. I'm not there. It gives me an awesome platform to be able to talk about it and hope that other people get to do that too.
That's awesome, man.
Is there any thought of going back?
My first year, I was like, all right, if some team calls, like I remember the Bengals lose. I think they lost, maybe they lost 2 linemen. They lost a couple linemen, and they had that playoff run going, and they lose the right tackle. And so I was like, man, I wonder if I could play right tackle. Like I was like, maybe I'd go back to one of the franchises I played for, Cincinnati or the Rams, if something happens. I remember taking a set like in December that Sunday, watching games on a Sunday in December, and I was just like, oh my God, there's no way. Like that felt terrible. And then I started working out, got after it. This past year, like I was in pretty good shape. I was training a lot. I don't think I could have done it. But now I've hit the point where I feel so daggum good. Like I don't ever want to go back to how that felt every day. So I don't see it happening, but I'll never say never just because you never know. Like I did say, I'm up for challenges and adversity. So That part of me has not gone away. So
Yeah.
there's still this. It's not an itch to play football. It's an itch for somebody to say like you can't do
You
something.
can't do it,
Like,
right?
you tell me I can't do it. Now that's a good chance. I'll be there.
And it's so funny too, because like you kind of ask for like all the rumor mill stuff of like he could totally come back, and it's like, but at the same time you have this like legendary storied ending and longevity and like amazing career where it's like literally picture perfect movie stuff, but it's like is he going back? He can go back. Like,
Yeah, I think that's it. A team's got to stop thinking about whether they asked me to come back. Just tell me I couldn't. Oh, you couldn't come back.
Right,
We do have a
right.
slot if you want it. That would probably be the best way to get me back, but I don't think so. I don't think it's ever happened.
Yeah.
Hell
That's
yeah.
awesome, man. Dude, this is making me wish I played football, man.
Dude, it's gonna be
Haven't started my clock yet, I know. 32.
There we go.
We got
Come
time.
on.
We got a little time. No, man, that's awesome, bro. This is like, even just sitting here, just with some stuff I'm dealing with in my own career and everything. This is very motivational and inspiring, and like, keep the path, right? Stay focused. And I actually, I was listening to one of these podcasts and I heard what I thought was a really cool story about how you wrote a letter to the owner. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I when I was in Cincinnati, it was actually the year before I left. So I had played in 15 for Hugh Jackson. He had gone on to become the head coach of the Cleveland Browns after that season, but I had gone through the season, and I'd been really in 14 and 15. I think I gave up 1 sack in 2 seasons, and so pretty crazy run for a left tackle, and kind of felt like, hey man, I'm 30 something years old, but 33 or 34 at that time, but I feel great. I'm playing awesome. So I went to them and I was like, hey, my contract ends after this season. I would love to, like, I don't want to go into this year, because for a while there I'd been making, I don't know, probably 30% of what most left tackles were making in the league in the last couple of years of my deal. And I was like, I'm done doing that. Like, I've earned the right. Like, you guys should give me an extension and not make me have to play out this year for such a low number. And I remember them being like, hey, we'll get back to you, blah, 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 before the draft. And this was like January when the season ended, and Hugh had gone on to Cleveland. And so nothing ever happens. I keep checking with my agent, like, any word, nothing happens. And we get to the draft, and good way to get an answer without having to go through your agent is in the first round they draft Cedric Awuehi, the left tackle from the Texas A&M, who had just injured his knee during the season. They drafted a left tackle in the first round, and then the second round they drafted another kid who played left tackle and right tackle, Jake Fisher. So in the first and second round, they picked a tackle. So that's a good clue if you're wondering and you're a veteran, you're probably not coming back to that team. So needless to say, nobody had called me and really told me they were doing all that, and I was not very happy about it. So that led
Makes
to
sense.
like an ugly couple weeks of just like, I was pissed, because I was like, listen, like, who I've been for this team, for the community, for everything else, like, I just deserve better communication than that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm all right with like honesty. I don't like, hey, we're going to just act like, oh man, shoot, we forgot to tell you, and communicate it. So I didn't appreciate the communication part of it. So, but what I've always respected about Mike Brown, and Mike and I always had a great relationship, because I was one of the few guys who, like, I didn't care. Like, I'd walk up to Mike's office. If I had an issue with something going on, or like, I would just go walk in his office, knock on the door, because I always felt like if it's coming from a good place and I'm just honestly speaking about, where I am in my heart, like, there's nothing wrong with me telling this guy this, it's like in a lot of times in those kind of teams where it's family owned like that, this is not who Mike is, but it's like everyone perceives it as like, oh, that's the big bad wolf. Like, don't go up to the boss's office and speak, and it's like, like I think those guys are more approachable than you think a lot of the time. And so I would always go up there. And so I went up there when I was pissed, and he was like, hey, here's the reality. We signed these 2 kids. They're probably the future of the team. And that's kind of how life goes sometimes. Like, you're at a point where we feel like the best thing for us to do is to move on, and life, life's not fair. Like, you've done a great job for us. He's like, you've been one of the best leaders that I've ever seen, in my time being around, and just a tremendous human being, but we're going to move forward with these guys, and that's our choice. And I was like, he's like, we have the right to choose. And I was like, you know what? I respect that. You're honest, whatever. So we get into the season, we start the season 8-0.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, all right, we're 8-0. We're going to our bye week. And I have just been miserable. Like, I'm miserable to deal with at home, my wife and kids. Like, I can just tell, like, it's wearing on her. Like, I am so unhappy and mad that they chose to do this to me, and not give me an extension or anything, kind of send me out here on this deal. And so I literally write him a letter, and I'm like, hey, I go through the times of like playing Jared Allen and playing through these different guys that I've had to go out here and protect quarterbacks for issues that came up on the team that like I had to come to him about, the things that were good or bad. Like y'all made a bad decision and you need to fix this, and all these different things that had come up in the organization where I had defended the organization and the people in it. And I said, listen, I have chose to do those things my entire career and go above and beyond for everybody. And I don't regret that at all. But in the same token, what I do think that is important for me to understand is, who I am as a dad, a husband, just as a man in general to my friends. Like I've been not the person I need to be for the last 3 or 4 months, and I'm struggling. And I was like, I got to make a choice just like you made a choice for you. And that is, at this point of the season, I've actually made the money to pay the prorated part of my bonus back to you for what I would owe you if I walked away from the game of football. Damn. And I'm choosing just like you chose. And I think for me, I'll never be able to live with myself if I don't stand up for myself. And I feel bad that I caved and I'm still playing. So I'm going to walk away after this bye week because I feel like that's the right thing for me to do if we can't come to some kind of resolution on this situation. And I was like, I'll go with my kids back to Louisiana and it'll be over and we'll move on. And I respect the crap out of him. He hit me up and he was like, basically called me into his office. I went in there and he was like, you're right. And he's like, you've continued to play at a high level. You've continued to do everything right. You took the information that, how things went that you're upset about and you dealt with them. And the honorable thing for us to do is to give you a year extension. And so I was like, sure, I'll take it. Well, then I reach out to Katie and Troy Blackburn, who actually, it's his daughter and her husband, who were actually running the operations of the team. Like Mike was just the owner. And at that time, he kind of stepped away from doing a lot of that stuff. They were negotiating the contracts. And they're like, we don't support this. It was basically like, this is between you and Mike. Like, don't call us about negotiating it. Like, it's whatever you and him talked about. Like, we're out of it. That's between you and him. We don't want anything to do with it. So I was like, wow. So I'm getting an extension from the owner and no one else supports it and doesn't even want to talk to me about it. So I'm like, okay. So I take the deal and I'm like, hey, this is what's good for me and my family and I'm gonna protect them first and foremost. So I took the deal, went into the next season. I played great again. I was a free agent and I'll never forget Troy Blackburn texting me in January and saying like, hey, we want to talk to you about extending you or like figuring that out, that what it would look like for you to come back. And I was like, you know what? This time y'all can talk to my agent. And it was like,
Yeah.
You didn't want to talk to me a year and a half ago?
Yeah.
We ain't talking now. So cool, but not cool. Right. So it was like, hey, you had your moment and, you kind of gave me the response you wanted to give me in the moment. And I'm going to tell you what mine is. You talk to my agent in March. So that's where we were at. So it was like, it was awesome though. Cause I had heard that Mike's like paying attention, right?
Yep.
I had heard that Mike Brown loved to read. And so when I was like, man, I've gone and talked to him and maybe that's gotten contentious or maybe it hasn't worked. Maybe I should just write down what it is emotionally I feel. And when he sits and reads it, since he loves to read that, and he doesn't feel the need to have to defend it right in that moment where we're having this personal conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll hit him in a different way. And sure enough, it did. Like I wrote him that. And then what's really cool is I signed with the Rams in free agency. And obviously it's Cincinnati was heartbroken. It was emotional deal when that happens that I decided to go somewhere else. He wrote me a letter after that and mailed it to my house.
Wow.
And just an appreciation for me and those kind of things. And I have it framed actually in my office, the letter from him.
Awesome.
That's
incredible.
It's really cool. So it's a cool, like, man, it didn't end great for us, like as far as the organization and me, but like, I always feel like I'll always love Mike and appreciate him. And really what he did for me and my family and believing in me as a rookie in the NFL. And then all throughout the years, multiple contracts and stuff. And then that ending, even though it wasn't exactly how we both planned it out to be for us, inevitably a lot of respect.
Yeah.
Just in how it ended.
And look at, the best interaction was the one, regardless of outside circumstances, it was the one where both of you were honest to each other.
Yep.
Right. And you told the truth and you expressed yourself in a respectful way. And that ended up being the good, positive reaction. Right.
Well, right now in life just seems to be really difficult for people to do. It's just like, it's okay for each of us to have different opinions and like care about each other. It's okay. Right. Like, you know, we got to be better about that. Just the ability to share where each of us are at and have a respect about it. Right. Like,
and not have to attack each other for it. You know, it's like,
100%.
coming in with understanding. Yeah, man. But also what you did too is you stood up for yourself as a man, right? And as a husband and a father, and what was best for you. You know, and I think it's very easy to fall into it almost feels like a trap of going under the radar and not speaking up and not standing up for yourself, and then getting stuck with some deal that isn't the best thing for you, right? But to be able to believe in yourself that much and to know your ability and to know what value you add and what you put in, I think that's a lesson that a lot of us can, you know, take home and say, like, look, dude, like, I know what I'm worth. I know what I'm able to put in. I know the time, the discipline I have, and how I show up in the world. And, you know, this is my value, you know? And
yeah, that's why, like, you know, even for like that year to finish it with you, and then he goes on to become the Cleveland Browns head coach after that season, and I end up leaving and going to the Rams and those things. But the next year, so it's like, you know, having been through that, there's just so much respect of how each person kind of handled it. Right, there was certain coaches on that team that reached out and called me and knew, like, hey man, I know this is not cool. What's going on? Like, and then there's others that didn't, and like I walked away with like, all right, like. Yeah. And so I learned a lot from them. Not like I'm bitter at those guys, but I learned a lot. And me and Sean talk about this all the time. McVay is like, when a guy gets fired or somebody's going through something where you're like, dang, like I bet that's, you know, and you think, man, I'd love to reach out, but it's probably uncomfortable. Yeah. It's like, dude, just do it. Because like that person, they're not going to walk away from it. Like whatever, even if you irritate them in that moment and they're down, like, man, I hate hearing, I don't want to have to respond to this person. Yeah. They're going to remember that in their adversity, you were one of the people that texted them. They're not going to remember whether it irritated them. They're not going to remember what you said, but they are going to remember, man, I got fired, and Big Wit texted me and said, hey, dude, just thinking about you, bro. Like, I hope you're all right. Like, I know you're not all right, but I just want you to know I hope you are. Like, they're going to remember that you text them. Yeah. They're going to remember that you communicate. They're going to remember that you reached out. And they're also going to remember all the people that didn't. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's just the truth. And it means something to you. And so I think for me, I've tried to do my best to like be aware of that. And like, hey, all right, in those moments, even though that seems weird or uncomfortable, make sure you check on people when they're going through that kind of stuff. And just, it could be the easiest, simplest thing ever, but just something, right? Yeah. Yeah. Just to let them know you're thinking.
100%. Hearing all this stuff that happens in the locker room and even the politics with the owners, but then also going back and mentoring the people after you, right? I mean, it's like, what an ecosystem.
It's amazing. I think that's one of the coolest things that I don't know if every guy takes advantage of, but I wish they would. Like, you know, you talk to some of these guys that have played long enough, it's really just, that to me is the coolest part of the whole circle, is like the ability to go through things, good and bad, provide some feedback to the people you went through it with, and then also give some wisdom to the people who are coming behind. And so I think to me, it's always been something that I've treasured and really appreciate. And, you know, unfortunately the really bad part is I'm really bad at ever wanting to be, compensated or doing it in a way where it's for anything. I just love like talking about this stuff and sharing it and helping guys get to where they're at. Like, you know, I hear all the time, I never forget when I retired, Kevin Demoff was like, dude, you should like do consulting for the whole league or something, like come up with some way to do that. Yeah. And I was always like, you know, nobody will want to know this stuff. And then now here I am like 2 years later, and I do a little version of that, but I'm not getting paid for it. I just do it. So I enjoy it, man. I enjoy seeing people be successful. I enjoy people getting what they want out of life. To me, like that is rewarding, like to see people living their journey. And to stay in their journey and not give up. To me, that's just a lot of fun, man. I love watching it. So,
yeah. I mean, have you ever thought about doing a book at all or anything?
Yeah, I've been hit up for all that stuff. I'm just, honestly, I just do so much different crap all the time. I don't have time to do any of that, but I need to. I need to sit down. My problem with me is I don't sit down long enough to ever do that. You know, like I am, you know, running around. Like I always joke, like, you know, I am literally like Discovery's best client. Like I am that person that like, in the sense of like, I want to play golf. I want to work out. I want to go to, the spa. I want to eat. I want to like exercise. I want to go play baseball. I want to go, I want to hit everything they have there. I want to do like in a day. Right. And then awesome. I want to wake up the next day and do it all over again. Yeah. You know, and so like for me, like that's kind of how I live life. Like I worked out with some guys this morning, some linemen in the league. I'm going back to work out with another guy. Like I'll probably do some cardio. Like I'll read, I'll do an audiobook, I'll go walk. Like I'll go to my kids' practice tonight. Like I don't sit down. I don't watch enough TV or anything ever. I mean, I don't ever watch anything. So I don't ever sit down long enough to do it, but I need to sit down and write a book. That'd be fun.
You know what you could do too is you could get like a good ghostwriter to come on with you and then have them take a golf cart and play 18 with you, or they don't even have to play, right? But you talk while you play, or have them come to the gym with you and maybe do, and then that way you can like knock out an hour a day or 30 minutes a day, and then in a couple months you got,
also bring a camera and turn it into
I don't
a
know
show
what
at the same time.
randomness. I don't know what randomness I would be talking about every day, but I'm sure they could do it. They'll figure out a way to put it into something. But
well, I
it'd
mean,
be fun.
Everything we've covered today is definitely any given Sunday meets. Remember the Titans. I don't know. There's some classic sports film for sure, man. What a life you've lived. And
I know we're kind of talking. Yeah, dude, your life's been sick to hear about, man, and to see so much of the stuff that you've accomplished. It's really awesome. I'm a big fan of reading too, and I love books. I was wondering are there books that you enjoy that you would recommend for people, whether it's fiction or not?
I mean, I think there's lots. To me, it's I just think continuing to. I think a little bit on what we just talked about when it comes to, whether it be athletic attributes or mental things, like continuing to maybe find, like when you do your book selection, like I know a lot of people love to read fictional stuff, but, finding things that maybe touch a bunch of different parts of who you are, and that's what I try to do. Like when I first started out really having a lot more free time for all that, when I retired, my first off season, it was like I wanted to go read like Kirk Herbstreit, Al Michaels, like some guys I randomly ended up working with at Thursday Night Football, and then like every kind of like sports broadcaster, and like I want to go read the Joe Buck, like you name it. I want to go read their books and hear their stories and like how things went for them, because I knew that was an industry like, hey, I'm about to be in it, so I want to hear their experiences and what it was like, and and then on the same token, it's like I want to go read. About things of, leadership and culture and all that. So I'm going to touch things that I really love already. Right. And then kind of get into stuff like, whether it be Atomic Habits or books like that, where it's like, all right, some things I need to be better at, like just daily task things that like, man, I want to go freelance all the time, but like, what are some things I need to be better, just habitually getting good at every day?
Yep.
And how do I apply myself in those habits? So it's like, I love kind of just touching different spectrums of things that maybe I need to be a little better at this. Maybe it's something I'm really interested in or something I'm about to get into that I need to learn about.
I got into storytelling as a kid with the big fiction novels. And then as an adult, I got back into reading with the Eckhart Tolles, the Deepak Chopras, and the nonfiction, more spiritual, self-help type stuff. And then now I'm doing a 50-book challenge that's all sci-fi fantasy, like escape, take me to other planets and other worlds, right?
Oh, wow.
So I love reading in that way. It's like whatever mood you're in, there's a book for it. And like you're saying, even if you're prepping for a new path in life, a new career, there's books for that. I love hearing, I'm going into this. Let me study the people that came before me. Yeah. Like that's great. I wish more people would do that and pursue, books in that regard. But yeah, I'm kind of have this newfound love for reading. It's great. I love hearing your opinions on it and what you're reading too, because that's important to get that from people.
Yeah. And then you have a.
You're laughing at me.
No, I mean,
talking
I
about
know
the
a
books
bunch of
too
books.
much.
Yeah. No. But I mean, dude, you work in the film industry, right? Pretty much just my last thing I kind of want to touch. You still have a Big Wit 77 Foundation. You guys still doing that? Or?
Yeah, I would say we probably don't get into that. But I don't really do much with it. That was more something I did in Louisiana.
Early on? All right.
Yeah. Now here, like, what's cool playing in a bigger city, and I did this a lot when I was in Cincinnati. So I did a lot of my foundation when I lived in Louisiana for like where Melissa and I were from. We kind of formed it for that. Mm-hmm. But like here, I don't know. Sometimes I just feel like it's better to get. I've enjoyed being like an ambassador for foundations I believe in or tasks that I think are awesome. It's like, yeah, you can route it through your foundation, but it's just simpler and cleaner to like, hey, this is what I believe. Like, some of the housing initiatives, some of the things I've gotten a part of, like just homelessness. Like, it's like, I want to go promote the crap out of them because one, I think it's an awesome foundation and they do great stuff. But two, like I'd rather my name, like from a Ram and all this type of same story, like help them get other people that come.
Yeah.
Because inevitably what I get is some guy reaches out that heard it and they're like, hey, dude, I want to help out. Like, should I give to your, I'm like, no, just go give directly to these people. You know what I mean? And so I think for me, it's like identifying that, like, I don't need any credit for this, but I like, if I see people that I'm like, man, these people are awesome and they need some support. Like, I want them to get it, right? I want them to build whatever it is they want through all of that, you know, because I think that's the best way for it to have true impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
100%.
Well, that was cool.
Yeah, appreciate it, fellas.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for watching Studio 22.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
And follow our socials at Studio 22 Podcast.